experienced a bug in the shipyard controller, which was binded to dispatching the new sequences directly, even if there were older sequences in the trigger state waiting for execution. So the sequences were not executed in the order they were triggered, but if some kind of inconsistent state happens, this inconsistent state was a small period of time where no sequence was started, so no sequence was in running state, and older sequences were not able to yet start the way. And if in this time slot a new sequence appeared, it was kind of executed immediately because nothing was blocking it. So we made the changes that every sequence is not blocked only by running sequences, but also blocked by sequences which were executed before this sequence and are in the triggered state, so they have lower timestamp. So yeah, I won't go through all the changes, but yeah, if there are any questions, I will just ask. The next thing was introducing a webhook config version check. We actually forgot to introduce webhook configuration file version check. Today we support actually two versions, the alpha version and the beta version. So we were not checking this before, so we had some kind of problems. Nobody spotted this fix, but it was rather simple and did not make any damage. And the third bug fix was regarding the CLI, where we have some duplicated sequence data when triggering a sequence. So this was actually, we just removed the sequence flag, and there is no need to duplicate the sequence name in the CLI. Yeah, and the second part of the sprint, which was the main goal, was about zero downtime testing. This was mostly about executing the test, looking at the logs, investigating where the problems are, adapting the test, also some timeouts, for example, the pre-stop hooks, or also grease for periods. And yeah, it's still a little bit in progress. We had some nitpicks there. We need to finish before the release, but with the release, probably we will be able to say that we are zero downtime. Are there any questions? If not, I am handing over to Anna.
My turn? Yeah, I will share my screen just a second. Cool. So my sprint as well was focused on zero downtime tests. I also had a few chore and bug fixes, so I start briefly from those. First nice thing was we finally have a CP common folder in which for now we have added a few things. Among those, we do have now the interface to the API, which is being stored there. Also a few changes like adding Docker files for enabling testing in our pipelines were done here, but yeah, nothing much. A few things will be in the future migrated in this folder in our core, Keptn core. Then there was a bug among our webhook. The beta version is now having a denied list, which is built. And what is happening right now is that basically some of the internal IPs were not filtered. So the solution for the bug was to simply adding also host resolution in the denial. So if we have the address that resolves to the Kubernetes local cluster, any address that resolves to that cluster then will be denied. These other issues was related to parallel deliveries, parallel sequences. If we had two sequences on the same project, same stage, but regarding different services, the wanted behavior would be that we can execute them in parallel since there is no conflict among them. This was not happening because we had a filter in which we were considering the stage already booked if there was something on any service. So it was as simple as adding a filter based by service as well, so that now we could do all of them. And this is being solved here. Not much to say about this one. Moving on to the zero downtime test pipeline, a few improvements to the pipeline has been done. First of all, now we are able to select things such as whether or not we want to run UI test together in parallel with the zero downtime test to verify that also the bridge works when we are doing upgrade and downgrade. And this can be selected by this tick here. Then what else has been added? The possibility to select in the pipeline to specify a full URL for a certain specific commit image of in our Helm charts. And also the ability to schedule this as a cron job. So basically, for now, we have that every Monday, the zero downtime pipeline will be run automatically. For now, we did not set up any issues auto-generated because we are still perfecting the test, so we don't want to have any flukes and false alarms. A few refactoring has been done in this PR as well on the logic of how we run at the same time the Go test and the Cypress test, but not much really. Then finally, now we do have a documentation for this whole pipeline in docs, developer, and zero downtime test. So it is explained how to run them locally, how to run them on the clusters, and what are the steps if you would like to add any other test using the zero downtime test suite. There are also a few explanations on what are the setups that you can do to customize your test. So you can increase the amount of upgrades that are done by the test, and you can change the intervals with which you are probing the APIs and you are running new sequences. All of this part has been added by another PR, which is now still waiting for review, because we are profiting from this to add some perfectioning tweaks to the test in itself. I think that's it. If there are no questions, I think I can pass over to next. Who's it? Klaus, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Let me share
Stop
the screen.
sharing. Yes.
So, yeah, not actually much from my side. Just one bug fix, for example. We had the bug in the evaluation board that if you create a service and execute an evaluation and then go to the evaluation board, then the view service details button was missing here. This was only appearing if the service was created and the narration was triggered on the same page without refreshing. And yeah, this is fixed by now, and the button should always be there. And we also took the opportunity to rewrite some of the whole code that was here in the evaluation board. And yeah, that's basically it for this one. Yeah, and the next thing comes to the polling. In the bridge, we are now removing some polling mechanisms that are not really needed. And now, for example, for this one, we have the metadata endpoint in the bridge backend that updates the service filter information. So yeah, service and stage information. This was in a polling in a polling interval of 30 seconds or so, and this is now only fetched once if the set is accessed or if the project is changed. So yeah, no polling for the metadata here. And yeah, that's basically it from my side. So any questions to that? If not, then I will hand over to Ermin.
Thanks. Yeah, from my side, two very similar pull requests, like the last one from Klaus. It's about removing polling first for the evaluation history in the environment screen. So in the environment screen, when you clicked on a stage, we had a polling mechanism here to load this evaluation results, which is not needed here in this place, and to increase performance for the bridge and also reduce the load on the Keptn core. We remove the polling here. It will reload when you click on a stage. So every time the user clicks, of course, it will reload. And the second place where we remove this is from the settings screen. So in the settings screen, in the services list, we also had a polling mechanism here. Since the user visits the settings screen just to edit or create a service, we load it only once when you visit this page. So that's it. If there are no questions.
Ermin, can you jump back to the environment screen, please?
Yeah, of course.
And know that there is always a polling for the project state, so to say, but there is also one hidden behind the trigger new sequence button. Can you just click on it? And or I'm just asking, is there a polling mechanism that checks constantly whether there is a new custom sequence, or is it loaded just once?
I'm not sure if we documented that, but if there was a polling, I guess it should be in our list where we discussed the polling mechanisms. But I think here it will load only once when you open the form.
I think someone already removed the polling here.
Or it was already removed. Okay.
Actually, I think we don't have any polling here any longer.
No.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thanks for the update.
You're welcome. So then I'm handing over to Meg.
Okay. Hi. So I want to show a PR that is under. Are you seeing my screen? Did that work?
No, we don't.
Not yet.
Let's see. Try share screen again. There we go. And click. Come on. We can't access your screen. Come on. And restart my browser. No. No. Oh dear. But I wanted to look at we are going to be doing some major restructuring of the documentation. One part is to create reference files or a reference page for all of the configuration files that we have. These are sort of, for those of you who are used to old man pages, that's sort of what I have in the back of my mind. They are not for the novice who's trying to figure out how to do stuff for the first time. They are, they are a summary of, they should be a summary of thing that one can do. And oh dear, and I can't show you what I've got, so it's hard to ask how we do this. Anybody have any bright ideas? Can someone
of us share the screen for you?
Would you not mind? If you, I was going to show you my local build, which I think might be prettier than what's on here. If you can to that PR, There are 3 files here, and the third one is the one we're interested in. The other two collateral damage that I won't trouble you with here.
I can share my screen.
There we go. And then if you could go to files and go down to the reference file shipyard. And then you probably would rather view it formatted. Okay, so brief, the shape we've got here, which I think is close to what we begin with a very brief description, Kurt, about what this file is, then this, and then if you scroll down, after the section where we describe sort of every bloody line that's in here, I am right now, but that's one of my questions. Below that, there's a usage section which form for things people should know about this. It's nice to have examples on reference pages, but Shipyard is so immense. I'm thinking about, I'll give them an example, but we'll give them links to other files where we will discuss different parts of it and have examples. Below that, there is a files section. Playing a little bit, need to tell them where the file is located, where they created, I suppose, where it's going to be in the upstream GitHub, perhaps a link to the GitHub section that does that. Differences between versions is an old favorite of mine. It is a place to summarize. Right now, I did give a link to the one thing. Have to, but I'm not going to try to go back and backfill, although if anybody wants to contribute it. But as we go forward, when there are changes in the file, we can say that, that this field is only supported in 17 and later, or this field stops being supported in 16 or whatever. It's a nice summary for us. Over the, when we first make the release, it's in the release notes, but a couple of years later, it can be really hard to figure it out or something to know that. And then the standard C also. So that's the general. Now, my first question is, when you come into the reference section for files, do you want to see this called shipyard or shipyard.yaml? And when we begin and say the shipyard.yaml file defines your project, do you want it to say shipyard.yaml or shipyard? How do we, a lot of times we just talk about it as shipyard, but the file is actually called .yaml. So what do we want?
I would propose going with shipyard only and
Okay.
leave out the .yaml aspect, because the shipyard is kind of a very central element in Keptn, as it's the way of declaring how your Keptn is working. And we came up with this naming. It's not a standard name for something, and hence I would go calling it just shipyard.
Okay. Now, when I come into the file section, what about the remediation.yaml and the slo.yaml and all of those? Do we want the files, the listing of everything in files to have a mix of .yamls and non.yamls, or should we take it off everything? Or I defer to those of you who have this more on your skin than I do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the SLO.yaml as well as the remediation.yaml, those are configuration files. The one is used by the Lighthouse service, the SLO, and the remediation.yaml is used by the remediation service. And
but this argument is also true for shipyard.yaml. It is used by shipyard controller. So I would simply skip the .yaml because, for example, in Kubernetes, we also talk about deployments, about services and so on. And in the end, yeah, they are stored initially as YAML files so that you can apply them. But I would not care too much about the file extension.
I agree. Let's remove .yaml when possible, and just talk about SLO, talk about remediation, and talk about shipyard.
Okay. And we got under files, we can tell that it's, we can do that. Okay, good. What about
one question though? How would you reference then to those files?
yeah?
Take a look at the shipyard file. How will a novice user know that he needs to look at shipyard.yaml and so on? So it's kind of strange to reference then to those files when it comes really to files without the file extension, in my mind. Take a look at, for example, if you have somewhere written, you can see that in the remediation file.
Yeah.
That kind of points to nowhere from a naming point of view.
Yeah, but at the end, it also could be shipyard.json, and it's just a matter whether the shipyard controller understands JSON and or YAML. It's a more technical detail than user relevant, isn't it?
Yeah, also true.
In the end, just from my side, from the outside, I would also not reference the shipyard file. I would say the shipyard configuration when you really want to reference in the documentation. Because where the configuration is stored can change over time, and how it is stored, it doesn't have to be a file theoretically. And you say, look at the shipyard configuration, it's more referencing to any kind of way of storing the configuration.
I always like that idea.
Mm. Yeah, because when we think about the other two files we discussed before, the SLO as well as the remediation, they are already said that those are configs.
True. And boy, are they different enough? Maybe it's not legitimate to have shipyard in the same reference section as I was kind of thinking of them as all configuration files, but but shipyard obviously is special.
Yeah, shipyard is more special than the others.
Right. And we can there's going to be a lot of iteration getting this right. We can try something and look at it when we get enough, and we can always change what we're doing too. So what do we want to try first? Shipyard only, but others are SLO.yaml.
The proposal from, I think it was Simon, it was a very good one, to talk about the shipyard configuration, not the file as
Right.
an artifact, more like the configuration of the shipyard, the configuration of an SLO, the configuration of a remediation. And leaving out the .yaml aspect, because this is a rather technical detail,
Mhm.
and also the file aspect, and really thinking about and talking about a config.
So from the being a doc weenie, I come into the reference section. We've got command reference, we've got API reference, and I've shoved in a miscellaneous, which right now has one thing. Is this one, should it be files? Should it be configuration files? Should it be configurations?
Configurations would work best from my point of view.
That would
What was
change, and
the
then I'd quit thinking of it as a file. That might get me back on a straight path too. So so we'll try it. So try making, instead of files, it'll be configurations. And then the shipyard configuration is expressed in a shipyard.yaml file. The SLO configuration is expressed in an SLO.yaml file. The introductory sentence, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
maybe we don't even say that. Maybe that's down. We've got files and say this is going to be shipyard.yaml located such and such. But that sounds like something worth trying.
Mm-hmm.
Now the header that I've got on the page that's fields. Can you scroll back up to that one? It's just under synopsis. and that they're under synopsis there where we're going to describe all of these. Fields, parameters, what is the generic term for? We've got stages, sequences, tasks, and trigger on, and everything that can be on its own line in here. And I couldn't. They're not options and they're not arguments, and
I think
but
it would
there's
be
something.
a good idea to take a look at how Kubernetes is calling such fields, because at the end they somehow look like a custom resource definition in Kubernetes, and we should learn from what is a best practice, or from how Kubernetes is doing that.
Okay.
I try to look it up.
Okay, let me see what I can
But
see. Yeah.
I can't find something right now. But I would align it with the naming and convention that Kubernetes is using in this regard.
Okay. Now, within the description where you really can see it, go down to the tasks. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not showing it. The old documentation that I stole as a basis for this had a little synopsis block for each task, and I started to propose to preserve those and even have them marked synopsis. And then I was thinking having that synopsis in the middle of the description is annoying. And can we scroll down like just a little bit more? The first couple, action and approve, do have a synopsis within the description. And it seemed like a good idea at first, but as I look at it, I think I want all the synopsis to be up in the synopsis section. And here we just discuss it. And if they want, they can roll back and forth. But does anybody disagree? No.
No,
Okay.
looks good.
Okay. And let's see, I think those are actually my big issues. There will be a lot of anybody who wants to review. There's going to be a lot of reviews. I'm hoping to fairly quickly. I was hoping for 16, but we're not going to make 16. But maybe by release 17, have these good enough that we can release them. It isn't that we're replacing perfect documentation, and then they're going to have to evolve over time a lot. That's how it always goes with these things. So. But does the shape of it, does it look I mean, is the writer on some good drugs and thinks this is a nutsy thing to do? Or does this look like a useful thing for us to have?
Definitely a useful thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
also,
users are asking, and as of today, we need to show them the specification, the Keptn spec, which is rather technical than user-friendly. And hence having here this in a written form will help a lot.
Okay, because also I've noticed there's some that are not even in, but they're in README files. And I wanted to also make sure that the developers aren't going to object. It's good to have some of the source close to the source code, but it's okay if we pull all that stuff that I can into the documentation. You won't feel like I'm usurping the README files.
Do you also describe somewhere on this flight level in this document here, what are the possible formats you have to put into? For example, for the triggered after property, how does the user know that this must be of this and that format? For example, 10 seconds, 10s.
Then there is the description for triggered on, and then that will reference, we have a separate file that will be over in the guide material about triggers, which at first I got sucked in that triggered on was all about triggers, and somebody pointed out to me that no, you can also trigger through the CLI or AL API. So we will get that, but it will be sort of an iterative thing. This will describe triggered on, and then we'll link to the article about triggers, which we can beef up and put in everything we want with lots of examples and discussions and recommendations.
Okay,
Does
so
that-
this document just describes what's the purpose, what's the behavior of all the things you can do in the shipyard thingy, and it will contain that then links to more detailed information which speaks about, okay, what's now exactly the format of the time frame I need to use when I want to specify a triggered after thingy.
Right.
Okay, good.
Right. This is about my fourth attempt at, some of the other files or the configuration that I started were fairly easy, but this is about my fourth one on Shipyard. At one point, I think I was, at a 30-page document and still just getting started, and I realized that was not going to work for reference.
I just like
So
it.
I think that's what we got is we'll keep, this will be minimal, but it will be, my thing is always, if I'm familiar with how to do things and I know what I'm doing, but then there's always that little thing, what exactly is this called? Where does it go? Etc. And I can look at this quickly and get that information. And that's sort of what the purpose is. And also a statement of it. And over time, we've got some flexibility. Something that we think really needs to be here, we can always add. There's always ways to do that. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's just the right flight level, so to say, to describe the overview of that, of the concept and of the...
It'll get more useful when we have the other docs. I mean, most of this information is out there, but I know I these docs and read these docs, and then, okay, I know I saw that someplace and I can't find it. The fact that we don't have a search engine on our documentation engine is a problem that will be solved fairly soon. So, but meanwhile, yeah, so we'll get a little better, and then I'll be able to sort of work down the levels. If I want more information, I can click someplace and get more information. So, oh, Johannes, okay, in the chat, field is very like Kubernetes in this context. So maybe that's an okay.
Just did a quick research and was taking a look at how Kubernetes is explaining the custom resource definition of a deployment, and there the term field is heavily used and also a very common term.
Okay. So perhaps that is a good term to use then.
Right. I would go with that.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Coolness. Okay, and so we've had enough of this, and I will hand off to Simon. And
yes, thank you. So I want to just a second. I never used that tool. I want to talk about two certain things. Okay. Because for the documentation, I opened two pull requests. One is the improvement of the documentation build, because I saw that there are a lot of dead, some dead links and things like that. And I fixed quite a lot of them, but I'm still stuck with 30 issues currently, sorry, which...
I fixed a few more last night.
And which actually those are 12 issues, because a lot of them are in there for different kind of versions. I only fixed 14, 15, and 16 issues so far, and not older link versions. And those are sometimes things pointing outside, like to code owner files on the Keptn community, which does not exist anymore, and things like that. But I'm not sure where I find this information or this context. I'm not that familiar with the project, so there would be some guidance from the team needed somehow to fix those last 30 issues, because then we can merge this pull request, and there will be a build within each pull request, checking if there are some kind of dead links in there pointing to some resources which do not exist anymore, to just give a better overview of the documentation. Currently, I deactivated some checks because there are just too many faults, too many issues regarding regarding the alt text for images, for example, I ignored them. So in the HTML test YAML, you have the configuration, what I'm looking for, so what we are querying and what we are testing and what we are not testing, and what rules, for example, are ignored within the documentations for checks. Some of them are ignored with added comments for those why I ignored them, just to give you an overview why they're ignored. And the build will fail afterwards if if the check is failing. Additionally to that, we also have now a make file in there to make it easier for people to start the server with Docker images, to build the documentation with Docker images, and also to manually execute this test locally with a make goal. So that for people, it will be easier in the future to set up the documentation build and work with the documentation.
And this should be a big help to get us through. Now, I think we'll be moving to Docusaurus, I think, this fall. And Docusaurus, I think, has its own HTML test. We'll have to look at that and see if it's as good as this or whatever.
No.
But yeah, I've fixed it. But my, the test I can do is to read through the docs and click on every link and see if it takes me where it should. So, which is inefficient.
Yeah, and Simon, I'm happy to help you here. Just send me over the PR and the report you showed before, where you identified all the broken links, and then I can either tell you where you find the resource now, or whether it's still valid to have this reference or not. Yeah, because I know quite a lot of things that are around the project.
Doesn't amazing. Simon, does your tool, does it check if the current file is which is for 15, is referencing a file in, say, the 0.11.x tree?
No, that's not in there in checking.
Okay.
But I fixed within my pull request. Wait, why does it? I fixed a lot of. Wait a second. I fixed a lot of references, for example, where we had hard-coded links in there, and I fixed already a lot of links which were not appropriate, and also I fixed a lot of absolute links in there also. There's just the problem with the CLI commands. We cannot, because they are as I just realized they are generated automatically. There we always have this hard-coded public link in there, which we should remove from the documentation part before merging it in there. So but that's auto-generated by a bot, I see. So maybe somebody can just configure the bot to go over the files and remove this hard-coded URL for the current version somewhat.
Well, that's sort of all of this is going to change when we switch to the new doc engine. So we don't want to spend too much effort, I think, repairing the old doc. We know that we've outgrown the old doc engine, I think, right, Johannes? Yeah.
And the second part is this is just the first part regarding those links and everything like that. So this should fix a lot of links. Also, for example, there were links to GitHub with release in front of the tags, but the tags are just with the version. So those configurations are properly working now and everything. And the second part, this is now a draft, and it is based on this branch because there's also the tool Markdown lint CLI, which helps you to generate a more concise Markdown lint and a more consistent Markdown for all your files. I'm not sure if Docusaurus will also use Markdown or not. But in the end, we also do have there are a lot of issues. I just need to switch to my branch because the actions are not running here. So when you take a look at the Markdown lint file with the checks, we have there a lot of, for example, headings which are not incremented the correct way. And all those kind of things. And Markdown lint is actually quite powerful because you also have a fix property where you can fix most of these issues manually already. So this is, for example, there are things where, for example, in the contributing MD, for example, there were things with contributing MD. I looked if here I am. There were, for example, the ordering of the numbers was not correct, for example, and things like that, which just which popped up further down here. So then the ordering was not correct. There was one so I changed that already and things like that. So it will provide a more concise markdown file experience, let's say that way, and you can automatically fix it. And also there is, on the one hand, there's again this markdown lint file where you can exclude rules or configure rules. We have an ignore file to not fix old documentation, more likely. And as usual, I put, where's the make file? Just a second. I normally also put in here, and I also put in a make file target so that people can actually use markdown lint locally and also fix markdown lint locally. So with an automatic approach. So this should just ease it for people to write proper documentation in the same format all the time. No. But this one still needs more attention because of the issue, because of the current topics failing here.
Yeah. And then before this merges, you'll add instructions about how to use this to the contributing .md file. Yeah, okay.
That would be most likely needed, yes.
Yes. Good.
Yeah. But those are the two things. So I'm not sure. I just started with them because I saw them. I'm not sure if I should pursue with those issues or not. So I will just, for the HTML test, I think it's a good idea to finish those 10 issues, and I will get in contact with Johannes regarding fixing those topics. Markdown lint CLI is another topic where the question is if you really want to have that in there. I'm not sure if Docker Saurus uses Markdown or how the documentation will be written there.
It is Markdown, but we'll be restructuring everything.
Yeah,
Johannes, you said something. By the way, I've got my whole long list of improvements I want to make to the documentation and structure. But if you have a list of priorities, I would love to know that, because you may have some things that, I look at stuff as to what I like and don't like or something, and you may know where the real pain points are.
Mm-hmm.
And if I knew what those were, I could certainly prioritize. There's going to be a lot of rewriting and moving and restructuring happening in the next few months. So.
Yep. Mac, can you just send me over your list, and then I take a look and leave a comment there or add my thoughts on top.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have my master map that I'm working on. It's not complete, but I'll send you a link to it, and you can see where I am. And feel free to do anything you want to it. So.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, but regarding Markdown lint CLI, I will just leave this for now because I still think it's a great benefit to add it, but we will take a look at all the rules, if they're really an issue or not an issue, and take a look if we want to fix them or not. I think I will just get together with Meg regarding that to take a closer look at the current issues reported. And the other one, I will just, as I said, get in contact with Johannes. I say thank you for your time and listening to me. No.
Okay, I think everyone now had the chance to present its work. I would like, before we close the meeting, to still show you some new feature that was contributed to Keptn. There was also a PR to finally migrate the high chart library, which is used to show our evaluation board, to D3. Now you can enable that via Helm flag. So there is this bridge.d3heatmap.enable. If you set this true when you install Keptn, then the evaluation board for the heat map view only would be using D3 instead of high charts. And if you want to change your instead deployment of the bridge, you just need to change the value of the D3 heat map enabled environmental variable to true. This will be released with Keptn 16, and please experiment with this and provide us with feedback if everything we implemented is working as expected, as with high charts. Okay, and then there was also in the chat a suggestion from Suraj to also provide some documentation directly in the CLI, like kubectl does with the explain command. So we might want to have Keptn explain shipyard.
It's basically like you can do kubectl explain and the resource name. So for example, deployment dot template.spec, and it explains you all the fields under spec for you. So you can just try it out if you have kubectl installed now. It is a really helpful command. It would be nice to have something similar for Shipyard as well. It's just an idea.
Huh.
Yeah, I just run it
And
for.
that you're talking shipyard, but Giovanni, or
Yeah,
would it be
Yeah,
both?
this
for
is
instance,
how it looks.
I just run the
Yep.
Kubernetes, and this is the example for the kube control command. And we might want to have something similar for the Keptn CLI.
Ah. What is the feeling? As I haven't gotten deeply into the CLI docs, but as I glanced at them, well, I'm an old Unix person, so they look so much like man pages. I thought, oh, this looks in good shape. Does it need work? Do they need structuring? Do they need additional material?
They are automatically generated, so I will not put effort there.
But there isn't there authoring in them. I mean, I need to go and see how they're generated, but that looks like it's got something that somebody's.
That's in the definition. So you have a YAML which defines the resource in Kubernetes, and it's a part of the code basically. So you have to define it in your YAML custom resource definition file, that this is what this field means, and then kubectl command auto generates the documentation for you when you do kubectl explain and deployment dot something something.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure how feasible this is, but it just popped up in my head. Might be nice to have something like that.
We can certainly look at, we could define what it look like and then see if we see a way to do it. What about the API documentation? It bothers me that there's no place that I can, without having an installed Keptn instance, I can't see what the API is. But again, that may just be doc bias.
I was looking into this 2 weeks ago, and I found a way to show the Swagger UI as part of our website, and we might want to versioning the Swagger UI in a way that you can check the API documentation for version 16, version 15, 14. But I didn't come up with a solution how to do the versioning. But right now, let me go. For instance, if you go right now to Keptn sh/API, you can see now the APIs that Keptn is expecting for this automatic Git provisioner extension point that we offer.
Oh.
And the idea to
Do we also
something
have?
similar. Sorry.
Do we? I don't know if we have this feature, but do we have a feature in CLI where you could put forward to this API in the Keptn cluster, and then it would show you the API documentation on localhost, because this is really good. One problem I see with the Keptn.sh/API documentation is this is the documentation for latest version. So there can be confusion, as in if my Keptn cluster is on, let's say 1.12, and the latest documentation is 1.16, then I'll be looking at 1.16's documentation when I should be looking at 1.12's documentation.
Yeah. Or to be able to have a differences between versions, which I favor something like that just because I don't know if we have it with Keptn. I've lived in worlds where one site might have different releases running, and they don't want to have to look at 3 different sets of almost identical documentation trying to do a grep with their eyes to find, aha, that's different. That's the nice thing about differences between versions. We can at least highlight where things change. But even just being able to see it would be nice. Giovanni, anything you've got there, we might want to throw that at our GSOC kid as a requirement. He's pretty sharp too, or as a wish list thing or something, to see what he he's taken off pretty strongly. So there, and it seems like Docusaurus has all sorts of powers. So it might be able, if it had input, it's, you know, one of our requirements is that we can take source from a zillion repositories and
Mhm.
put it all onto the Lax site. So this could be a nice one to go for.
Sure, I will reach out to you then to discuss this a little bit better. Okay.
Marvelous.
So I think we are at the end of the meeting. Are there any last minute topics from the community? Okay, if not, I will say thanks a lot. It was a nice presentation with all nice work done in the last 2 weeks, sorry. And I wish you a nice day. See you next time. Bye-bye.
A good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 See you. Bye bye.
Thank you.